You've probably noticed it yourself. Sometimes when you stop chasing, when you stop being overly available, the way a woman feels changes in ways you wouldn't expect. There's a hidden psychology at work, subtle, almost invisible, but incredibly powerful. And today, I want to pull back the curtain and explain exactly how pulling away affects a woman's emotions, why it works, and how you can understand it in a way that's respectful, authentic, and effective. Emotions are complex, and the human mind responds to absence in fascinating ways. When a woman is used to constant attention, constant validation, and constant presence, her mind becomes conditioned. She expects it. She grows comfortable in it. But when that pattern shifts, when you pull away, when you stop being the readily available presence she's accustomed to, it triggers something deep inside. It's not about manipulation or games. It's about natural human psychology. When she feels your absence, she begins to reflect, to wonder, and to reassess the emotional space you occupy in her life. It starts subtly. At first, she might not even notice that you've pulled back. She might feel a slight shift, a small void where your attention used to be. And what happens then is fascinating. She begins to fill that void with thoughts of you. She begins to remember the moments you shared, the laughter, the connection. Her mind naturally gravitates toward understanding why you're not as present as before. This is the essence of emotional reflection, when absence allows space for thought, for feeling, and for emotional evaluation. A critical point to understand here is that pulling away doesn't mean disappearing entirely. It doesn't mean ignoring or being cold. It's about creating a healthy distance that allows her emotions to recalibrate. If you suddenly vanish, if you withdraw completely without reason, it can trigger anxiety, insecurity, or even resentment. But when you pull back in a measured, deliberate way, you give her the space to truly notice your value. You create an emotional tension that, when balanced correctly, intensifies attraction rather than diminishes it. Now, the way emotions shift is almost predictable, but only if you understand the underlying psychology. When you step back, she experiences a spectrum of emotions. First comes curiosity. Why aren't you as available? Why don't you respond as quickly? Then comes longing, a quiet, sometimes almost subconscious desire to reconnect. And finally, there's reflection. She begins to evaluate her feelings, her expectations, and the role you play in her life. It's in this stage that true emotional depth begins to surface. She's no longer responding to your presence out of habit or routine. She's responding to the absence, the space, and the emotional pull you've created. This isn't a trick. It's not about playing mind games or testing her. It's about understanding how human attachment works. When someone is always there, they become familiar, and familiarity can sometimes dull desire. When someone pulls away in a healthy, confident manner, it reminds the other person of the value of what they have or what they stand to lose. And let me emphasize, the key word here is confidence. Pulling away without confidence, without self-assurance, can come across as passive, aggressive, or insecure. But when done with calm, grounded confidence, it signals strength, independence, and emotional stability. Here's where it gets interesting. The emotional shifts don't happen all at once. At first, there might be mild irritation or questioning. She may feel a small sting of rejection, and that's normal. But this is where emotional reflection begins. She starts asking herself questions. Do I miss him? Do I take him for granted? What is it about him that I don't want to lose? These thoughts are powerful because they move beyond superficial attraction into deeper emotional territory. She's not just thinking about your presence. She's thinking about what you mean to her, the connection, the memories, and the feelings. It's also essential to understand the role of timing. Pulling away too early, before there's any real emotional connection, can backfire. She might not feel invested enough to reflect or miss you. Pulling away too late, when she's already fully comfortable and accustomed to constant attention, can also be ineffective because the emotional dependency is already established. The magic happens in the balance, the point where there's enough connection for her to care, but enough distance for her mind and heart to work without constant input. Another aspect to consider is emotional projection. When you step back, she begins to project her own feelings, desires, and insecurities onto the situation. She may replay conversations, overthink interactions, and analyze your behavior. This isn't manipulation, it's human nature. Our brains naturally seek patterns and explanations when someone we care about changes their behavior. By pulling away consciously, You allow her to engage in this projection in a way that ultimately brings her closer to understanding her true feelings for you. And here's a subtle but critical detail: when you pull away, your absence creates anticipation. Anticipation is one of the strongest emotional drivers in human relationships. It's why people enjoy waiting for letters, messages, or meaningful encounters. When she anticipates your presence or attention, it amplifies the emotional intensity of the eventual reconnection. By contrast, constant availability removes this tension and, ironically, can reduce desire. Desire thrives in the interplay between presence and absence, between attention and space. It's important to note that this principle applies not just to romantic attraction, but to emotional connection in general. Women, like all humans, crave attention, appreciation, and emotional recognition. When those needs are met constantly without pause, they may go unnoticed, taken for granted, or undervalued. A temporary, confident withdrawal allows her to see, appreciate, and internalize the value of what you offer. It's the space that creates clarity, reflection, and emotional depth. Let's address the common misconception. Pulling away doesn't mean ignoring her or being emotionally unavailable. Emotional availability is crucial for trust and intimacy. The goal isn't to create frustration or insecurity, it's to create emotional resonance. By stepping back, you give her the opportunity to notice what's been right in front of her all along. By returning with warmth, attentiveness, and genuine interest, you reinforce the value of connection and deepen emotional bonds. Many men fail at this because they misunderstand the purpose of pulling away. They treat it like a game, a strategy, or a test. And when it's perceived that way, it often leads to confusion, hurt, or mistrust. But when done with authenticity, groundedness, and respect, it becomes a tool of emotional clarity. It highlights your self-worth, your independence, and your understanding of human emotion. It signals that you are not desperate for approval, that you respect your own time and space, and that you are confident in the value you bring to a relationship. You may notice that after pulling away, she begins to communicate differently. Her messages may shift in tone, her energy may change, she may seek more genuine connection or attempt to reestablish the closeness you temporarily step back from. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural response of an emotional system adjusting to change. And when you respond with authenticity, with measured attentiveness, you reinforce the dynamic in a positive way. She feels seen, valued, and understood, and the emotional bond grows stronger. It's also worth mentioning that pulling away is not a permanent state. It's a temporary recalibration, a strategic step in allowing emotions to breathe, reflect, and grow. If you pull away indefinitely, it can create distance and detachment, which is counterproductive. But if you pull back consciously, allow space, and then return with clarity and connection, you create an emotional rhythm that fosters desire, appreciation, and deep emotional engagement. Pulling away also tests the strength of attraction in subtle, non-verbal ways. When she notices your absence, she reflects on what she values about you, what she misses, and how she feels in your presence. It reveals emotional truths that constant proximity often hides. The shift in her emotions is rarely immediate. It unfolds gradually, like a slow burning flame. And it is in this slow burn that attraction solidifies, desire intensifies, and genuine emotional connection strengthens. So, how do you implement this consciously without overthinking or overanalyzing? The key is self-awareness. Recognize your own patterns of attention, notice when you're overextending, and understand the emotional dynamics at play. Pull away not as a tactic, but as a natural, healthy adjustment to maintain balance, autonomy, and emotional resonance. Pay attention to her responses, her engagement, and her emotional shifts, but always remain grounded in your own values, priorities, and self-worth. Ultimately, pulling away changes a woman's emotions because it interrupts the habitual patterns she's accustomed to. It creates space for reflection, desire, and emotional depth. It allows her to evaluate her feelings honestly, to miss your presence authentically, and to appreciate the value you bring to her life. And when done with authenticity, confidence, and respect, it strengthens the bond, deepens attraction, and enhances emotional connection. Remember, the goal isn't to manipulate or control, it's to create a dynamic where both individuals feel seen, valued, and emotionally engaged. It's about balance, Presence and absence, attention and space, closeness and autonomy. The shifts in her emotions aren't random. They are predictable, natural, and rooted in human psychology. By understanding these dynamics, you gain insight not only into attraction, but into emotional connection itself. So next time you feel the urge to always be present, to always chase, to always seek approval, consider the power of stepping back. Not as a game, not as a test, but as a conscious, authentic choice. Notice how her emotions shift, how desire deepens, how reflection emerges. Watch as the subtle dance between absence and presence unfolds, and recognize that in pulling away, you're not withdrawing. You're allowing the emotional landscape to breathe, to grow, and to transform in ways that constant proximity could never achieve. And here's the truth you'll carry with you. When you master the balance of presence and absence, when you understand the natural rhythms of attention and reflection, you unlock a profound, unspoken power in human connection. It's not about control. It's not about games. It's about creating the emotional conditions where attraction, desire, and genuine connection flourish. And once you see it, once you feel it, once you understand it, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Because pulling away isn't about losing her, it's about creating the emotional space where she finds you even more captivating, even more compelling, and even more essential in her life than ever before. So, the next time you feel compelled to always be there, always respond, always give, remember this: the moments you step back, the spaces you create, and the calm confidence you carry aren't emptiness. They are the very canvas on which her emotions will paint the depth of her feelings for you. And in that quiet, in that space, in that intentional absence, you will discover something extraordinary: a woman's heart responding not to pressure, not to persistence, but to presence transformed by absence. And that, my friend, is where true attraction begins. Now, let's dive even deeper into what happens emotionally when you pull away. It's not just about the initial curiosity or longing. Those are just the first layers. Over time, absence begins to create an internal dialogue within her mind. She starts replaying moments, conversations, laughter, subtle gestures you made that she may have taken for granted before. Suddenly, the little things you did, the way you listened, the way you smiled, the way you made her feel understood, become magnified in her memory. What was once normal now feels extraordinary because the constant presence is no longer there to dilute its impact. This is why pulling away can be so powerful. It's like taking a painting off a wall and then putting it back in its place after a period of absence. Suddenly, she sees it in a new light. She notices the colors, the details, the beauty she had become blind to. And emotions, unlike logic, are deeply tied to perception. By creating a pause, by allowing her to reflect on your absence, you change her perception, not of you superficially, but of the emotional depth, the value, and the unique connection you bring. It's fascinating how the mind works when it comes to attachment and desire. When someone is always there, it can create a kind of emotional habituation. You know the feeling. When something becomes so constant that your mind stops registering it fully. But when that constant presence is interrupted, the brain suddenly becomes alert again. Attention spikes. Emotional responses intensify. The heart reacts differently. The emotions that were once dulled by familiarity are now vivid, alive, and urgent. Pulling away triggers this heightened awareness, and in turn, the emotional bond becomes stronger. This isn't about creating drama or anxiety. It's about emotional recalibration. By stepping back, you give her the opportunity to process her feelings, to notice what she misses, and to appreciate the depth of connection that might have been taken for granted. And here's the subtlety most people miss. She isn't only reflecting on the absence itself. She's reflecting on you as a person, your value, your energy, and what you bring into her life emotionally. It's a shift from superficial attachment to emotional appreciation. Timing and consistency are crucial in this process. You don't pull away once and then return inconsistently. You create a rhythm that is natural and believable. It's not about calculating days or hours. It's about maintaining a steady emotional presence while giving space where it matters. Think of it like music. The rest between the notes make the melody beautiful. Without silence, without pauses, music loses its impact. Without emotional space, attention and desire can lose intensity. The rhythm of presence and absence is what creates emotional harmony. As she begins to feel the subtle shift, you'll notice changes in her behavior. She may reach out more intentionally, engage more deeply, or express herself in ways she hadn't before. She starts to crave the emotional resonance that your presence brings because she realizes it isn't automatic, it isn't guaranteed. And when you return after stepping back, your presence feels like a reward, not an expectation. This is the secret many people overlook. Absence doesn't diminish connection, it enhances the quality of connection when reintroduced thoughtfully. One of the most interesting psychological effects of pulling away is how it allows her to confront her own feelings. When someone is always available, it's easy to avoid introspection. But when there's distance, she begins to ask herself important questions. Do I truly value this person? Do I appreciate the connection? How do I feel when they're not around? These questions lead to self-awareness, and self-awareness leads to emotional clarity. She starts understanding not just what she wants from you, but also what she wants in herself, in the relationship, and in her life. It's important to emphasize that this strategy works because it aligns with natural human tendencies. Humans are wired to respond to emotional contrast. We notice changes, react to shifts, and are drawn to intensity. Constant sameness can lead to complacency, but emotional fluctuation creates engagement. When you pull away in a calm, confident manner, you create a subtle but powerful contrast that her mind and heart cannot ignore. It's a psychological principle as old as human attachment itself. And let's not forget the role of confidence and self-respect in all of this. Pulling away only works when it comes from a place of stability, not insecurity. If you pull back because you're worried about losing her, it will feel desperate. If you pull back to manipulate or provoke, it will feel contrived. But if you pull back because you respect your own time, your own energy, and your own priorities, it radiates authenticity. Authenticity is magnetic. Authenticity creates trust, respect, and admiration. And when emotions are heightened by absence, authenticity ensures that the emotional connection deepens rather than fractures. Another layer to consider is anticipation, the emotional tension created by your absence. Anticipation is one of the most potent emotional triggers. It's why people remember experiences more vividly when they wait for them. It's why suspense and surprise have such a powerful effect. When you are not always available, she begins to anticipate interactions, messages, and moments with you. That anticipation makes her presence with you more intense, more meaningful, and more emotionally satisfying. Desire thrives on this anticipation, on the build-up, on the emotional suspense that your absence naturally creates.